least around the sports world and maybe beyond that. The Cowboys sending superstar pass rusher Micah Parsons to the Packers in exchange for defensive tackle Kenny Clark and Green Bay's first-round picks in each of the next 2 drafts. Parsons then agrees to a 4-year, $188 million contract that includes $120 million fully guaranteed at signing, $136 million total guaranteed, making him the highest-paid non-quarterback in NFL history. The aftermath, Micah Parsons releasing a statement saying, in part, "I never wanted this chapter to end, but not everything was in my control. My heart has always been here, and it still is. Through it all, I never made any demands. I never asked for anything more than fairness. I only asked that the person I trust to negotiate my contract be part of the process. This is a sad day, but not a bitter one." That's his side. Now we hear from Jerry Jones and Cowboys legend Michael Irvin.
This gives us a better chance to be a better team than we have been the last several years since Micah's been here. Not any negative on Micah, but we're trying to get better. We're trying to stop the run and stay in the hunt. I'm very, very excited about the prospects of what we've done for the Cowboys here. We got what we wanted. Make no mistake about it, we all know we could have signed Micah, but we decided to go with the trade.
This is a dark and sad day for Cowboys Nation and the Dallas Cowboys. But as much as I love Micah Parsons, and I hope the best for him and his family, this is a real sad day.
Okay. I'm going to walk you through how we're going to do this. Shefter and Graz were right in the middle of this all day long, breaking this
Shout out to Shefter and
late
Graz.
in the afternoon yesterday, along with outstanding work by Todd Archer as well, right? Our guy in Dallas and everything else. So we're going to start by walking you through exactly how this happened, and then we will get to the aftermath. Shefter, I'll start with you. Take as much time as you need. How in the world did we get from where we were to where we are this morning?
I think we go back to the spring, to when Jerry Jones had a handshake deal in his mind, the way that he once had a handshake deal to buy the Dallas Cowboys. When he met with Micah Parsons and shook hands on a deal that averaged $40.5 million in the spring, Jerry Jones thought they had a deal, but Micah Parsons didn't. And when Micah went back to his agent to apprise him of what they had discussed, the agent didn't want any part of a deal that was supposed to be a 5-year contract. And from that point on, the Dallas Cowboys and Micah Parsons never once negotiated another contract. So if we are looking for when the time with Micah and the Dallas Cowboys came to an unofficial end, it would be when Jerry Jones felt like he had a handshake agreement at that point in time. After that, there was silence, there were quotes that hurt feelings, there was Micah issuing a public trade request in early August, there was Micah experiencing back tightness, Micah in California this week for a second opinion on his back, and there was zero sign or zero hope of any deal coming together to keep Micah in Dallas for the long term. Micah and his representatives reached out about a week ago to see if Dallas would be interested in moving forward, and they were not. So if they're not moving forward with a long-term deal, then clearly Jerry Jones at that point in time would have some interest in having Micah play out his contract with the Dallas Cowboys, which Micah Parsons never was going to do, and thus other teams began calling. Now, I'm told there were multiple suitors for Micah Parsons, but in a way it feels a little bit like it was with the Dallas Mavericks and Luka Doncic, who traded him to the Lakers and really only spoke intensely with the Lakers. Now, there may have been intense negotiations and trade talks with other teams. I'm unaware of them right now. I think there were other teams that inquired, but it seems like Green Bay was the only team that got real serious and real quick. And this came together very quickly, as evidenced by the fact that Kenny Clark practiced with the Green Bay Packers yesterday. If the Packers knew and the Cowboys knew that this deal was getting done yesterday, Kenny Clark would not be practicing. but he did practice. And in the end, later in the afternoon, the Cowboys and Packers agree to a deal. Micah agrees to a deal, and Micah gets in his new deal $188 million, $48 more million than Jerry Jones once paid for the Dallas Cowboys when he had a handshake agreement to buy them for $140 million.
All right, that's an outstanding roadmap. And Graziano, you were here with me yesterday, and I got the sense from you long before we went on the air that something had changed. And you said it on the air here yesterday. This thing has taken a turn, and it's coming to a head. I don't think you expected it to happen as quickly as it did, but you knew something was coming.
Yeah, I think as of yesterday, and we were on, Schefter and I were on the phone a lot yesterday, even at 2 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday, it still was, it felt like it was heading in this kind of direction, but no one was sure it was going to land here. I think at that point, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but at that point, I think the agent had been in contact with the Packers with the Cowboys' permission,
right?
You know, to talk about what the contract would look like. But still, at that point, I think both sides were kind of thinking like, all right, we're not sure this is going to happen. And to Adam's point, Micah had already gone to see the back doctor in California, and so that was setting up for a dispute if no trade happened and no extension happened, and Micah was going to say, I'm not healthy enough to play. So the Packers moved very quickly yesterday afternoon to get this done. I think the price in terms of compensation going back to the Cowboys wasn't really hard to arrive at. They were always going to be looking for multiple first-round picks and a defensive player that could help because they were trading away their best defensive player.
Right.
So I think once it got back to Micah Parsons, hey, here's the contract, here's the team, are you good with this? I think it probably came together pretty quickly after that. But yeah, as of yesterday morning, this is what it sounded like. The Packers and Cowboys had been in contact with each other. We knew it was a possibility that this could happen, but there were still a couple of different ways it could go. And Adam makes a great point about Kenny Clark wouldn't have been out there practicing if they knew he was in a trade.
You saw on your screen a few moments ago the Packers play the Cowboys Week 4. Interesting year for Green Bay. A few weeks after that, they will play Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers. So there's some games to circle. Before I get to the football players who are chomping at the bit, let me get the general manager in here, because you and I have been talking about this at great length. I said back in March, the Cowboys could consider, maybe even should consider, trading Micah Parsons rather than re-signing him, because this doesn't feel like a Super Bowl team to me, and you could try and turn him into the Herschel Walker of this generation. They didn't do that. In your mind, what did that lead to happening yesterday?
It is inconceivable, Green, how they did this. It was a massive strategic mistake. They comported themselves for much of the offseason like they're trying to win. They go out and get George Pickens on a one-year deal. They let other players leave like DeMarcus Lawrence, Jordan Lewis, because you have Micah Parsons. Look at this graphic. When you have Micah Parsons, you're going to build around him. You're trying to win now. You signed CeeDee Lamb to an extension. You signed Dak Prescott to an extension all recently because you're trying to win. So on the offensive side, you're trying to win now, and you have a new offensive coach in Brian Schottenheimer. On the other side of the ball, you move on from these players that you would have kept.
Some of the moves they make feel like win-now moves, and then trading him away for 2 first-round picks, which, by the way, don't figure to be very high picks, feels like the opposite of that. And so, in your mind, if a dollar is worth 100 cents, what did they get for him in this trade?
60 cents on the dollar. And let me bring up 2 teams in particular, the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills drafted a defensive lineman in the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th round and signed Joey Bosa. You're moving into a new stadium, and you have a chance to get a transformational player. This is the best player outside of Troy Aikman, Greeny, that the Dallas Cowboys have drafted in 31 years. Yeah. And you can go get him moving into a new stadium, and you're trying to get over the hump to beat the Chiefs. You're the Ravens, and you have a chance to get a player like Micah Parsons. Who knows, maybe the Chargers, who knows who else steps in. But the fact that they didn't create a sense of urgency in March was a massive mistake that will cost this franchise for years, because you just don't know who else would have stepped up back then.
That's the point. I think for all the people yesterday that I was seeing on social media and other places saying, well, they're better off not having paid all that money for him. That's fine. If that's the way you feel, that's one thing. But this was not the way to go about it. This was not done. This was not planned. This wound up being forced upon them. Okay, I have made you guys wait too long. Dan Orlovsky, you've heard all of this. This is how it happened. This is where we are. What's your reaction?
Good organizations do not trade Hall of Fame players in their primes. Right now, the Cowboys are not a good organization. This will go down as one of the worst trades in the history of their football team and their organization. They traded away a future Hall of Famer for what likely will be the 28th to the 32nd pick in the first round.
Right.
The Packers are going to be good as long as Jordan Love is healthy. You got 2 picks that are basically early second-round picks, and depending on if the draft is loaded with talent or not, could be very invaluable to that football team. I think the shine for the Cowboys is gone because of this. When I grew up, no one left the Dallas Cowboys. Nobody. The fact that this was Micah initiating, I don't want to be here anymore. The allure of the star feels gone. They got fleeced. This is not a trade that you can sit here and go, well, they're going to use those picks to go get Arch Manning. Arch Manning ain't going to be there at 30 when you guys are picking in 2 years. So
right.
I look at this and go, from a business perspective, Jerry Jones 100% lost this negotiation. From a football perspective, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys 100% lost this negotiation. This is one of the, as far as we won or lost, worst days in the Cowboys since Jerry Jones has owned them. And this is like remember after the Green Bay Packer debacle in the playoffs?
Yeah.
He could not have handled from that moment to this moment worse.
By the way, Kenny Clark, the player they get in this, will be 30 in October. Really good player, but obviously an aging player. D-Wood, go.
Jerry Jones reminds me right now of Al Davis at the end of his career. It's almost sad to see, to be honest with you. Jerry Jones has done a lot for the game of football. Everyone knows that he's in the Hall of Fame owner. The marketing aspect, the business acumen, he's done so much for the game of football. But when you see a move like this, it makes you sad for him and the Dallas Cowboys, because this is inconceivable to move again, like Dan talked about, potentially Hall of Fame player, Hall of Fame talent in Micah Parsons, literally right before week 1, when you're supposed to play the Philadelphia Eagles for 2, low round, first round draft picks. You are not going to give players, on the same level as a Micah Parsons. You don't deal away a 26-year-old superstar player on the cusp of the season. If you're going to make this move, and you guys have already said, you make this move in March, when you can literally open up the floodgates to all their teams. If someone wants to, give you, a king's ransom, not before the season. That's why I said Jerry Jones just reminds me of Al Davis right now.
I think that's why this is so shocking, right? Because the Cowboys always sign the guy, no matter how dragged out it gets, right? Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb just last year, like, we're used to this. This was not the plan. Something changed. And that's, I think, part of the reason it lives as a huge mistake, because if you get off your plan, then you end up making mistakes. And I think that's what happened for the Cowboys.
And we've been there. When you run a team, so many decisions happen. And let's say your plan changed. Greeny, you just put a Band-Aid on it. We just talked about that with Trey Hendrickson. Again, you don't get George Pickens on a 1-year deal to start rebuilding 4 months later before you play games.
Ironically, the Cowboys make this trade yesterday on the same day that Forbes values them at $13 billion, which is 24% higher than any other team in the NFL. Schefter, go.
They're talking about the timing of the trade being off. The fact that the Cowboys should have looked to deal him in March, should have casted a wider net, even though I think there were multiple suitors here for Micah Parsons. But here was a call or two that I got after the trade came down yesterday. They asked, why are the Dallas Cowboys trading Micah Parsons in the conference? Why are they trading him to a team that has knocked them out of the playoffs in each of the last 3 years? Why are they not looking to deal him to an AFC team so that there will be one less obstacle as they try to use those picks and that player, Kenny Clark, to try to get back to the Super Bowl? I heard that from a couple of football executives yesterday, that they would have been better off dealing him in the AFC rather than to the team that's knocked them out of the playoffs the last 3 years. But I think in the end, this is also true, and this came from another executive as well. Jerry Jones felt like this was his modern-day version of a Herschel Walker trade. He felt like he needed to do something dramatic to shake up things for a team that has not reached the conference championship game in 30 years, that has not gotten past the divisional playoff round in 30 years, and by making a blockbuster, shocking trade the way he once did with Herschel Walker, he could inject youth and picks and another player into his team and recreate some of that excitement that the Cowboys had the last time they went on an extended postseason run.
But he's wrong thinking that.
That's
the whole
not
problem.
that trade.
No one is sitting here going, trading Micah Parsons is the dumbest thing you can do. Everybody, whether you're deep into the front office operations of how it all works, or you cover the sport, you're an analyst, is sitting here going, you did this a week before the season, and then you did it to a team that is going to be picking late in the first round.
Yeah.
You didn't do it with the team like the Jags or the Browns or somebody that has a higher likelihood of struggling, and then those picks become the transformation. That's what that's the crux of this is. For the guy who's running the football team, this doesn't make football sense.
Here's the Herschel Walker trade. They got 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks, a third-round pick, and a 6th-round pick.
That's
there
not
it
even
is.
close.
Yeah. So, like, to me, again, do we get there in March, guys? I can't say here in good conscience you get there. But what I can tell you is, being on the other end of these calls for 20 years, guys, when you get a 26-year-old future Hall of Fame pass rusher in their prime, those are the sort of things you think about.
How many game records are there in the NFL?
Maybe a dozen.
That's high.
Yep.
Game records, not probably 6 or 7. T.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Dexter. This guy is a game wrecker. He wrecks football games. You don't just give them away for a player that might be drafted at 28 or 30 and hope is an impactful player. You gave him away.
You know what Jimmy Johnson didn't do? He didn't orchestrate the Herschel Walker trade in one day because they were starting preparation for the Eagles on Friday, and they didn't want this hanging over them, so they made sure they did it on Thursday. That was a calculated decision that made a lot of sense in a variety of ways. It was criticized at the time. Sure. I was covering the NFL at that time. There were people who were criticizing the Cowboys for trading away the player. Obviously, they get the last laugh. It was the way they built the dynasty. This is so far from that, both in planning and in execution, that it really doesn't, they don't belong in the same sentence. Now, we will have plenty more time. Pardon me, I'm choked up just thinking about it all.
This organization never swung like this with Aaron Rodgers. They never made a trade like this when they had Aaron Rodgers.
That's right.
This is an all-in move with Jordan Love. So now it's an offense that is loaded. But you talk about Rashawn Gary, who's their other pass rusher, and Mike Parsons. That's the best pass rush duo in the NFC now, in the whole conference. So the Packers were a team that was just maybe a tier below. Now they are right there and fully equipped to knock off the Eagles and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. And this is now a couple-year window where Jordan Love can go get it done for an organization that has had elite quarterbacks and not enough Super Bowl wins in the last 20 years.
When you talk about just a tier below, Packers lost 7 games last year. One was a throwaway at the end. They didn't start their guys. The others were 2 to the Eagles, 2 to the Vikings, 2 to the Lions. The 3 best teams in the NFC last year. That's the only games they lost that they were trying to win. So they are right there. So what are they doing? They draft a wide receiver in the first round for the first time in more than 2 decades. That's unlike them. A move like this is unlike them. But this is a team, by the way, youngest roster in the league, got younger with this move.
Yeah.
And still believes it's not only poised to win this next Super Bowl,
100%.
but maybe a whole bunch of them if this move works out the way they think.
That was the thing I was going to say. This is an incredibly young roster. Now you bring in a guy, Michael Parsons, who again is 26 years old. Just think about it. All this talent is going to grow together. This nucleus is going to be together for quite some time. They have a long runway to do a lot of damage moving forward.
Let me put A67 up just so you get a sense of how this was met in Vegas. ESPN Sportsbook now has Green Bay at 14-1 to win the Super Bowl, plus 550 to win the NFC, and co-favorites to win the division with the Lions. So you see, those are pretty significant. If you don't speak gambling, those are pretty significant jumps that came on the heels of the Parsons trade.
And here's why, Greeny. When you build a team, the first thing you think about is how do we win the division? So if we were all running the Green Bay Packers, we talk about the great offense of the Detroit Lions, all the talent that the Vikings have, assuming J.J. McCarthy is going to be good, and the high variance of what the Bears could be. You have to be able to rush the passer consistently. To Dan's point, with Rashawn Gary on one side and Parsons, who we know is going to get double teamed on every snap.
It's the best pass rush duo in the NFC now.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable front seven. So now we could go, compete against Jared Goff. We could go compete against that Viking offense. That's why those odds shift.
Greeny, think about it in this regard as well. If you're Jordan Love, what's the one thing that everyone says about Jordan Love?
He turns it over.
Don't matter.
That's right.
If I'm Matt, we are going to be ridiculously aggressive on offense because our defense is going to be so good, and Micah's going to get after so many quarterbacks. They'll get it back for us. We'll be fine.
Right. So even if he keeps turning it over, your turnover differential will shrink because your defense is going to. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Let me
aggressive.
Schefter, get back in here. How about the Packers side of this?
Well, I could tell you a few things here that are really interesting, Greeny. I could tell you in speaking to a few members of that organization yesterday, I have been in touch with them over the last couple of days about the prospect of Micah being traded there. And after the trade came down, they texted me back that was all they could think about the last couple of days was the idea that Micah Parsons would wind up in their organization, which in the end ultimately is what happened. And I go back to August of 1992. The San Francisco 49ers president and CEO, Carmen Policy, traded Charles Haley to the Dallas Cowboys. And Jerry Jones and the people in the Cowboys organization have said for years that was the trade that got the Dallas Cowboys over the hump and enabled them to win Super Bowls. Now we fast forward to August 2025. The Dallas Cowboys trade that type of pass rusher in Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers, whose new president and CEO is Ed Policy, the son of Carmen Policy. The Packers go out and get the player, essentially, who is one of two players in NFL history to have at least 12 sacks in each of his first 4 seasons. Micah Parsons, and the other, somebody that Green Bay knows a little bit about, Reggie White. So this trade looks like it has the chance to really work out quite well for Green Bay.
As you get a sense here, the magnitude of this is enormous. There are great gambling implications of it as well, and for that we have Joe Fortenbaugh with us all morning long. He'll give us some stuff on the NFL and on the college as the morning continues. But let's start right here. We have the trade yesterday. What is your best bet on the Packers coming out of this?
I want you to take a look at Jordan Love to win the MVP at 18-1. Long term, you're not going to make money buying high and selling low. So if you're waking up this morning saying, hey, I want to bet on Green Bay to win the Super Bowl, or I want to bet on Dallas to finish last, those markets have already been adjusted. You're walking into a buzzsaw. What you want to do is look for an ancillary market whose price hasn't been affected as much. Enter Love at 18-1 to win the MVP. 12 straight MVPs have been quarterbacks. 12 straight MVPs have been 1 or 2 seeds. 21 of the last 22 MVPs have won 12 or more games. So if you believe Micah Parsons is going to help Green Bay win a lot of games, this is the best way to take advantage of a good price that hasn't been affected as much by yesterday's trade.
As we approach the bottom of the hour, we're back on Get Up on ESPN with our top story. The Cowboys sending superstar edge rusher Micah Parsons to the Packers in exchange for defensive tackle Kenny Clark and Green Bay's first-round pick in each of the next 2 drafts. Parsons gets a 4-year, $188 million contract, $120 guaranteed at signing, $136 million in total guarantees, making him the highest-paid non-quarterback in NFL history. He went on social media and it was pretty simple in his response. Thank you, Dallas. Go Pack, go. So that's his side. As for Jerry Jones, here's why he thinks this makes his team better.
This trade was not just thought about today. This trade has been going on in our minds and our strategies and being talked about. It's been going on all spring. The facts are, specifically, we need to stop the run. And we haven't been able to stop the run at key times for several years. And when you have the kind of extraordinary pass rush that Michael had, then the way to mitigate that pass rush is to run at you.
Holy smokes, dude.
That's a lot of mental gymnastics.
That feels like he's like 4 years behind. Like 3 or 4. No duh.
It's tough to explain something that's inexplicable.
So
that's the problem.
So in order to stop the run, you got to trade away.
You got to trade Micah Parsons.
You got to trade Micah Parsons.
He came to the conclusion
it's like
that
he only plays on passing downs?
Yeah.
Like, you were watching a highlight. We were showing highlights of him at the beginning of this block, and I'm thinking to myself, we spend the whole offseason talking about contract and dispute. I mean, he is so freaking good. Like, you're watching him accelerate through the whole. I mean, I don't know.
Game record.
It's unbelievable.
And he doesn't just do that. He was an off-the-ball linebacker in college.
Do whatever he
There are
wants
people who
out
say
there.
if he wanted to,
Look
he
at
could
this.
play corner. He's the most freakishly talented defensive player in the NFL, with the exception of no one.
Greeny, 5 days from today, the Dallas Cowboys are on a plane to play the Philadelphia Eagles. Brian Schottenheimer has waited his whole life to be a head coach in the NFL. He has an offense that could be playoff bound and a defense that has questions at pass rush, linebacker with the injuries to Damari and Overshone, and massive questions at corner. So to me, like, if you're Brian Schottenheimer, and Sunday, and Graz talked about this on NFL Live yesterday, Sunday is Wednesday. Like, they are in a plane in 5 days.
Yeah.
What is Brian Schottenheimer saying today to his team?
Well, they haven't had him all camp. I mean, like, they've been preparing.
But, right.
I get what you're saying, but I mean, what Brian Schottenheimer is saying to his team is not, "Oh God, we're in trouble." Like, I mean, they have to build it up.
But Dak Prescott came out and said it's going to get done. It always gets done.
Schottenheimer said that. Brian said that. Was it Monday?
Right.
This week?
But
I mean,
that's
very
what
few
he
days ago, Brian Schottenheimer said, I fully expect Micah Parsons to be on the field against the Eagles. And we all reacted to that. You were here with me that day.
Yep.
No, he can't play that soon.
Right.
They have to start ramping up his football activity. We didn't realize that the reason he wouldn't be able to play against the Eagles was because he would be a member of the Green Bay Packers by the time that game kicks off.
This is why I go back to the moment of the Green Bay Packers loss and saying that day after, this should be a full restart. Because for him to sit there and say, Jerry Jones, we're struggling to stop the run. This has been the case for 4 years. You could have done multiple things over the last 3 years to be better at stopping the run. You draft Mozzie Smith in the first round. That hasn't panned out. But there are so many other options that you can go about. This is why I say that not a good organization right now. They're just not. Because while they've drafted some nice players, specifically on the offensive line, there's no way that you – because guess what, Mr. Jones, happens when you stop the run? Teams have to pass. And then you want a pass rusher that can go get the quarterback. And you just gave him away for the 30th pick of the NFL draft. You're not going to stop the run with that player either. And so that's why you just look at this compounding effect over the last couple seasons, and it feels they're so detached to what reality is. Howie Roseman a couple years ago drafted Jalen Carter when many teams wouldn't because of reasons that are justified. Yeah. Yesterday, they traded away Micah Parsons when no other team would have done that in the prime of his career. And we're still trying to figure out the reason why. That's the problem.
So let's try and figure out what this team now is. They go in here. I've got for B30 I can put up there. The line moved 1 point on this trade yesterday. The Eagles had been a 6.5-point favorite prior to this trade. They're now a 7.5-point favorite, so that moves 1 point there. We'll talk to Joe Fortenbaugh about the significance of that momentarily. That is a pretty significant number. But what are the Cowboys? So if we're in a division now where the Eagles are clearly the cream of the crop. You got the Commanders, who had a miraculous run last year. They've got a great young quarterback. They feel like they're on the come up. The Giants feel like there's finally some good vibes there. We'll see. I mean, of course, they haven't played a game yet. Everyone can have good vibes before the game starts. The point is the Giants finally feel like they're getting a little bit better. What are the Cowboys now without Micah Parsons?
We went into this season with Micah Parsons thinking that the Dallas Cowboys were third in the division.
Right.
Now you take a player the caliber of Micah Parsons off of this team, they're significantly worse. We know they're getting the quarterback, Dak Prescott, who missed significant games last year. But anytime you take away a top 5 player in the National Football League off your team, I mean, we could be making a case that they could be the worst team in the division.
And Greedy, more than that, there's an intangible here. And I'm just telling you, for doing this for 2 decades, when players would come up to me and say, hey, Mike, you blew it. Like, this player leaving is really going to cost the morale of the team. And when Dak Prescott and Brian Schottenheimer and all these guys are saying, like, well, Zach Martin signed late and CD Lamps, like, he'll be here for the Eagle game. I'm telling you, like, it is deflating in terms of the culture of the team.